In this episode, I will be focusing on the conversion of the kit-provided Merlin engines and the partial assembly of the wing. I'll also be painting and weathering the propellers. The 1-48 HKM Lancaster kit includes the Rolls-Royce Merlins for each engine. However, there is not an option for the engines to be visible in the completed kit. The only part that is visible are the exhaust stacks, protruding out of the side of the nacelles. There are also no engine frames modeled into the nacelle, so if you were to cut the panels off that would allow you to see the engines, it will not accurately display the assembled engine in the nacelle. That being said, I need something to hold the electric motors for this model in the correct position, and the engine parts are about the correct size to do this with some modification you see on screen. I started by cutting off the shafts and drilling through the remaining material on the reduction gearbox. Originally, I did the same to the front face of the engine block, but I needed additional clearance and ended up just cutting the front face of the engine block away. It's concealed behind the reduction gearbox anyway, so the missing material really has no impact on the overall appearance of the engine once it's assembled. The engines mount to a firewall in the nacelle using a molded-in hollow pin, which I was able to use for wiring once I had drilled the hole out in the back of the engine. This made it very simple to conceal the electrical modifications within the kit assembly. While assembling the Merlins for the kit, it's interesting to think about how the Lancaster and several other aircraft of the era all owe their reputations to this engine and future versions of its development. The Avro Manchester that preceded the Lancaster suffered greatly due to its Vulture engine that just did not have the reliability and it did not have the power needed to support the aircraft design, which effectively looked like a slightly shorter Lancaster with a slightly shorter wingspan, but it only had two engines. The Vultures, while great on paper, they just didn't perform the way that was necessary to support that airplane. However, 4 Rolls-Royce Merlins did, and at the end of the war, the Merlin was basically outputting about the same horsepower that the Vulture engines were designed for anyway. So, really, the Lancaster's success is built from these 4 really small parts of the kit hidden within the wings. I'm very thankful that the Border Lancaster has the ability to expose these engines, and I can't wait to build that model at some point in the future with the engines exposed. I purchased Aftermarket photo etch radiator faces for this kit to give a little more detail to the kit when viewed from the front. Honestly, in hindsight, while this is a nice touch, it's so hard to see through the radiator anyway, or the radiator channel anyway, that it doesn't make much of a difference in the overall appearance of the model kit in my opinion. So take my thoughts with a grain of salt while you are deciding what to buy aftermarket for yours. The engines are of course primed, then painted in NATO black. Given that the engines aren't visible, I believe you could probably skip the paint if you really wanted to. The exhaust stacks can be added on after the engines are assembled into the nacelles. However, I didn't have any difficulty assembling the nacelles around the engines with the exhaust stacks attached. The stacks are visible on the kit depending on whether or not you put the flash shields around the exhaust stacks on the outside of the nacelle. Lonesome Lola had those, so my stacks aren't really that visible. It's interesting, having done 3 HKM kits in a row now, how easy it is to do the electrification process in a way that is clean. And so I don't know if that was intentional or if it's just a byproduct of having such a large model effectively, but I do appreciate how easy it was to do the motor installation and the LED light bulb installation we'll get to later on, while also keeping it clean and not disturbing the model externally. So I did appreciate that quite a lot, and I appreciated the way that the Lancaster's nacelles and landing gear bays went together. I enjoy the look, I think it's really clean, and I like that you can see the internal ribbing detail on the wings, seen here on screen. And all I really needed to do was drill a small hole just to get the electrical wires through. So that's about it. That's all you can see, and that's only barely visible through the landing gear bay if you're really looking for it. And frankly, even then, it kind of just looks like it belongs, and in the historical context of what the aircraft actually looks like in this area, it is full of plumbing. It's full of oil lines, it's full of hydraulic lines, it's full of electrical and cooling system. It's just chock-a-block full with plumbing in this area. So while not modeled here in the model kit, if it were, it could be easily passed off, and if there's a modeler out there who's adding that additional detail, they could easily pass off additional electrical lines as some of the functional plumbing that the aircraft would have in this area. When assembling the nacelle halves, pay attention to the outlet ramps from the radiator ducts. These have been molded without their openings, and it's a relatively simple detail to add if you desire. Remember, however, that there are also flaps that open and close below that you can vary the position of, and they also hide this feature and make it a difficult omission to spot either way. I did not cut the opening into mine, and it's very difficult to see that now the kit is complete and it's displayed with its flaps down. So you'd have to be essentially underneath and as far aft as you can get to get the right viewing angle to notice it. And given that mine's mounted on a base with its landing gear down, you really just can't see it. So that's kind of my hint there for that part. During the installation of the inboard nacelles, I did run into a slight issue. Not really an issue, but something to note as you put the kit together. That the nacelles fit well, however, they require a little bit of bending pressure on the wing to keep the joint closed while they set. The wing, as you hold it, just kind of wants to droop a little bit because it doesn't have its upper half attached, and there's not much to reinforce it from flexing here with the nacelle attached. So a little bit of pressure is going to be required on the wing to keep the joints closed on the nacelle until the glue sets and everything's good to go. I did run into a small issue on the outer nacelles as I went to assemble them onto the lower wing halves. On the outer nacelle, there is a small tab that sticks up on the very aft kind of pinnacle where the two halves come together. This little tab slots through the lower wing skin, or the lower wing half, and on my model it was just a hair too large and required a little bit of trimming in order to make it fit. So something to be aware of if you are also building this kit. Propellers are a pain to paint with any kind of realism. On Texas Raiders, I painted my propellers and sponge chipped the blades, but I didn't really do any weathering to the blades. This is something that I've been wanting to try a little bit more lately, so this time I'm taking a different approach. Instead of using the kit parts for the propeller backing plates and the 3D printed bushings that I had previously made to attach the motors on the B-17s that I built, this time for Lola I 3D printed exact replicas of two of the kit parts assembled, with the modification required to mount to the electric motors. Once assembled, the propellers are primed, painted, clear coated with gloss, weathered, chipped, and then flat clear coated again. 6 layers of paint just for the propellers and the spinners. Propellers really are a big time sink just for some of the smallest visible painted parts of the model. But given that my propellers actually go through a startup sequence, I wanted them to look great both in motion and I wanted them to look great when they come to a stop statically. Given that I do not run the motors on these models perpetually, and eventually, due to unknown reliability, I assume one of these motors is going to break eventually. How long that's going to be, I have no idea. But at that point, the propellers are going to be static, either through failure or through inaction. As a result, they just need to look great in a static condition either way. So spending some extra time on these propellers is a great idea, in my opinion. As I barrel along to the end of this video, and I've now passed 2 Easter eggs in the video telling you what the next build is going to be. Yeah, have fun. Go find them. I'll give you a heads up on the next video. It's going to focus on the printed circuit board that's inside the wing of this model kit that brings it to life. And so it's not going to be super technical, but if you find yourself in a position where you would like to know more, it is going to be the video for you. I am absolutely happy to answer any questions, so feel free to drop a comment if you would like on how things are working, and I will be more than happy to try and explain that in a better way than I ordinarily would had you not asked the question. So ultimately it's going to be a very similar function to both the Texas Raiders and the Memphis Belle build. It's just a little bit smarter how I'm accomplishing it this time. So, if you stuck around for all of this video and you are not currently hunting in the background for the Easter eggs I previously told you are in this video, by the way, there's 3 in total. 2 of them have passed, the 3rd one has not yet. But yeah, if you're still here, drop a like, say hi, and feel free to smack that subscribe button. I would certainly appreciate it, as I am approaching 750, so that's kind of cool. I think that's kind of cool. But anyway, I will catch you all in the next one, and it's been nice to finally get these videos out and be a little bit more caught up. So a little bit more work is needed, and we're going to get there, but it's nice to get rid of the backlog or start chipping down at the backlog. Speaking of chipping, hey look, we're chipping. Yeah, catch you all in the next one.